in the country. And let me thank Rwanda for this strong effort. But with this effort, we aim to provide helmets that meet UN safety standard below $20 designed to be suitable for hot and humid climates, especially important for the Southeast Asia region and the African continent. By considering road safety as important as climate change, gender equality, safe workplace, we recognize its essential role in building sustainable communities. In closing, let's remember the goal of the second decade of action for road safety to cut the number of lives lost and injuries on the road by half by 2030. And I'm confident that through collaboration involving representatives from governments, institutions, and the private sector, we can address crucial gaps in motorcycle safety. We have a unique opportunity to make a significant impact through the UN Road Safety Fund's capacity building initiative under the 2024 call for proposal. And I really hope that you will find inspiration in the upcoming expert contributions and our collective effort. And I encourage you to align with the goals of the UN Road Safety Fund as we move into the next place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Todd. Very good context being set there. You took us from Africa to private sector partnership to advocacy, global advocacy, really underscoring this idea that this is a shared vision, a shared responsibility. So thank you very much for those words.
We make sure we bring one helmet here.
Let's bring one helmet here. Thank you. So while we do that, just to say that, of course, the UN, the Office of the Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety, as well as the UN Road Safety Fund, we are sitting in the UN Economic Commission for Europe. This is where we are hosted. The UN Economic Commission for Europe, it's also a very fitting place for us to be hosted as we talk about this topic of motorcycle safety and UN standards, given that they're housing or UN conventions on road traffic safety. So without further ado, it's really my pleasure to give the floor to Executive Secretary of the UNECE, Ms. Tatiana Moshian, for her to share some remarks in the context of this event. Tatiana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Neka, dear colleagues, and first of all, Jean-Claude, I'm really pleased to join this event because, as you have mentioned, UNECE is hosting and has this pleasure of working together with all of you and hosting the UN Special Envoy, the Secretary General Special Envoy, also the Road Safety Fund and the team. But what is also important, we are the custodians of so many international agreements when it comes to transport, but in particular to road safety. And I think this joint cooperation is what makes it as important and real to bring results on the table. But I took note of some of the comments that you mentioned earlier, well, including on international regulation, that it needs to be more, not a sufficient number of countries, let's say, have acceded to this regulation to make it major impact globally. But today's discussions, I think, are very important because it shows not only, let's say, UN support, but of the partners, and first of all, of course, Autoliv and all of you that are present today here to really bring a change to this area, not only to road safety, but specifically to motorcycle safety. And I see we have also colleagues from the World Health Organization, which are really providing a very invaluable, I would say, guidance when it comes, including to this sector, to the best practices on when it comes to this, also motorcycles and scooters. And together, I strongly believe by leveraging this best practices, we can address effectively, or better, I hope, make a change when it comes to the rising burden of motorcycle fatalities, unfortunately. And I do hope that these roundtable discussions will offer some additional insight with some very practical recommendations, but I would also like to remind that, yes, this is also one of the key aspects is to have the necessary resources behind it. So it's a first step towards the UN Road Safety Fund call for proposals in 2024. And the fund is really a key pillar for the global, I don't want to say it only UN effort in this field, but it's a global key pillar when we approach road safety. And it's a good momentum to start also discussions coming closer to the, we have next year the Road to Morocco High-Level Pledging Forum in February 2025. And it will be great for us to continue to work with all of you to deliver on this particular field. And I know that colleagues will later on speak more in details about their very practical application of the many tools that we have under this roof here in Geneva. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. I very much like the fact that she's given us a call to action for our discussions later, using words like leveraging and practical and building momentum, and also referring to the fact that we need to partner with each other to make this agenda a reality. With that, speaking of making this agenda a reality, I just want to give the floor to Michael Bratt, who is the CEO of Autoliv. He will explain himself, but he's unfortunately not here present today, but very much represented in the room and also online. Mr. Bratt, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from Autoliv. I would have loved to be part of the event today and meet you all, but unfortunately that was not possible. As the President and CEO of Autoliv and a member of the advisory board of the United Nations Road Safety Fund, I want to take a moment to express how incredibly proud and grateful we in Autoliv are to be part of the vital work that the UN Road Safety Fund is doing to improve safety on our roads and around the world. Together, we are making a real impact. I am pleased that we have decided to extend our successful partnership. Appropriately, we announced the continued partnership on World Motorcycle Day last Friday. Going forward, our support will focus on enhancing safety for motorcycle riders and other vulnerable road users. Through this collaboration, we aim to empower the global road safety community, UN agencies, NGOs, and technology providers to work together, enabling necessary changes. We also strive to make proven safety technologies accessible to road users in low and middle income countries. We are confident that safety for motorcyclists and other vulnerable road user groups can be significantly improved. However, achieving this will require policymakers' willingness to implement changes at a transport system level, ensure data availability for informed policies, and encourage regulators and industry players to adopt better standards for vehicle safety and variable protection. Additionally, informing riders about available safety options is crucial. Last year, we estimate that our safety solutions saved 35,000 lives and reduced an additional 450,000 injuries. Our ongoing goal is to save 100,000 lives annually. To achieve this, we recognize the importance of forming partnerships that can reach further and have a greater impact than we can achieve alone. It calls for innovative approaches to save lives. By collaborating with the UN Road Safety Fund and its global network of partners, we can significantly amplify our efforts. In other words, partnerships and collaborations are essential for reducing the global burden of road traffic deaths and severe injuries. Thank you all for listening, and I eagerly anticipate continuing our collaboration and the positive impact of the projects that with the support of the global community, we can now set in motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brett. Many things were said in that statement. The word I want to focus on there, I heard several times, was impact. I mean, this is why we're here. We want to see lives being saved. We want to see that impact on the ground. I was just recently in New York for the inaugural Road Safety Awards of the Bloomberg Philanthropies. And I saw that this really big institution that's funding road safety, they awarded 4 cities, 4 countries with awards on government actions being taken. And I was pleased to see that I think maybe all 4 of them, those actions we also see coming through our road safety fund programs. So I feel as if this is a good signal that we're on the good track, that we are delivering impact. And what we want to see coming out of this event is that we have more impact related to the motorcycle sector. Speaking of impact, speaking of work on the ground, I give the floor to the last speaker in the opening segment, Ambassador Usana Barananda. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to thank UN Road Safety Fund and Autoliv for organizing this event to commemorate the World Motorcycle Day 2024. As Changthot rightly mentioned, motorcycle safety is a serious issue in Thailand, and every year we lost 18,000 lives due to car and road accidents, and 74% of which are motorcycle users. And when you look at the number of increased registered motorcycle users in Thailand, we are now having 21 million registered motorcycle user riders in the country. But the number of them wearing helmets are very low. Only 52% of the riders themselves wear helmet, let alone whether they are safe helmet or high quality helmet, as Changthot mentioned, and 21% of the passengers wear helmets. So the number is quite alarming. So this is a serious problem, and we think that if we can enhance the awareness of the people and the riders to wear helmet, it will reduce the fatality on road safety. That's why our government is working closely with various partners, including the WHO and UN Road Safety Fund. We are developing the road safety master plan, which aims to reduce the road traffic fatality to 12 per 100,000 population by 2027, and to bring down the number of deaths and among motorcycle users by 50%. Key strategies that we introduce include promoting the use of crash helmets to improve motorcycle rider safety, as well as launching campaigns to reduce drink driving and speeding as well. We'd like to share some lessons learned in our various campaigns. First and foremost, it's been mentioned that political will is really needed. It's very crucial in developing strategies, policy, and regulations. However, that is not enough. What we need is to have continued advocacy to translate all those policy and legislations into real actions. And multi-stakeholders and public support are crucial in this process. And in the case of helmet wearing campaign, the change of behavior of the riders require both hard-hitting public campaign, strong law enforcement, as well as public support and participation in this campaign. Moreover, the government is committed to further improve road safety governance, including through accession to and successful implementation of the UN Convention on Road Traffic. We are also in the process of ratifying the Convention on Road Signs and Signals. A new parliamentary advisory group on road safety was also launched earlier this year to further strengthen our efforts to meet road traffic fatality injuries reduction targets. As part of the overall, campaign, we introduced the all-of-society approach. The advisory group will study and assess laws, policy, and action, and make recommendations, as well as coordinate and engage with parliamentarians, partners, and public to boost interest and accountability for road safety. And we hope that all of these efforts will not only help improve road safety in Thailand, but will also contribute to the international efforts under the second decade of action for road safety, and to renew commitment to halve road deaths and injuries by 2030 as targeted. And thank you. And then I'd like to hear more during the discussion today, whether we can improve what we are doing to
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So with these words, I'd like to close the opening segment. I realize that the Executive Secretary and the Special Envoy may need to step out momentarily. So we'd like to thank them very much for their support, for their participation, and looking forward to continuing that going forward. I'll now turn to the prepared statements from our experts at this stage. Did you want to say something?
Maybe before we let you free work, I would like again to present this helmet. So this helmet has been developed with experts. It's a UN standard. It can be produced in different factories around the world. It's ventilated because you know that in a hot country, one issue is the temperature, and it's below $20. So we need to promote this helmet. And incidentally, it's what I was mentioning earlier when I visit countries, head of states, private sector. I encourage people to have access. And here in this room, you have a lot of people who do more emotion about this helmet. Globally, I've been figuring that we would need to supply the planet 500 million of those helmets.
But what he's done on his part is to basically procure the helmets and to the standards, the specs, and then identified vendors or manufacturers that are able to produce them. And I think Steelbird is one of many that he's identified. I mean, I'm sure the Secretariat probably knows a bit more than I do. But this one happens to be in India, and I think he's identified another one. I mean, the first models, I think, were produced in China or something like that. I know they've had discussions with other manufacturers in other regions as well. But that's what he's doing on his part. His initiative is to develop a prototype to the specs that can be produced cheaply, at the price point.
Yeah. Just to add, this is not a prototype. This is a type-approved helmet, and not to any specs. It's approved against UN regulation number 2205, which is the recommended regulation 05. Because starting the process, start at level 05. 06 is brand new, more or less, less than a year old. So this would be then the first step, really increase, but already 2205 provides very high safety level.
So, being practical here, if there is a company that wants to provide this to its employees when we are in conditions now to buy them, they are available. Or
You can order them from one of the manufacturers,
And they are processed. And they are also available on the different markets around the globe. Of course, if you want to have, let's say, a bigger number of helmets purchased, then it's better to go directly to the manufacturer and not have 2 or 3 retailers in between, because every retailer needs to live from something.
Absolutely. No, I'm making that because Jan was asking us, how can we promote that? And for example, in initiatives of the health organization, we are looking at our supply chain, people who supply to us. And we are looking for buses with seat belts. We are looking, this can be for many people that moves. So maybe it will be interesting to have a kind of guideline, because if we make a public announcement, if you need that, these are the people who can supply that, start connecting the dots.
So that's exactly what we've discussed with Jean in terms of this initiative and how to link it to the sort of the engagement of the private sector, to think about what can private companies do through their value chain. So for example, if Autoliv, I mean, Peter and I have discussed this obviously, and this is what the discussion has been about, is if you as work through your supply chain and require that throughout your supply chain, those companies that supply to you or whatever, are mandated to ensure proper safety equipment, including, for example, the use of this helmet that needs the UN standards. That could be, one of the things that gets checked off in terms of whether or not a company is adhering to the requirements of the index.
And in addition, there is a project that motorcycles, if they are sold, are accompanied by 2 helmets that meet UN Regulation 2205 at minimum. And of course, IMA could be one of the big promoters because you're representing the global motorcycle industry. And if you go in negotiation with the producer of helmets, I think the price of, let's say, $20 may be lowered quite far due to economies of scale.
Thank you. Yes, please, Walter.
Yeah, and also for the different companies of motorcycle producers. If they have the add-on of 2 helmets, maybe this is also a good sales argument.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues online and in the room, we would like to start the second segment of this event where we hear from our experts about the issues around motorcycle safety. As the Secretariat of the UN Road Safety Fund, we are very much happy to play the role of facilitating this kind of discussion and exchange among our partners with the hope that in the upcoming call for proposals, you will be collaborating more closely looking at this issue, I mean, among others, related to motorcycle safety. And this is in particular thanks to the support of Autoliv, who are putting this focus on motorcycle safety through their most recent contribution to the fund. With this, I'd like to give the floor and open up this experts' statements segment to Walter Nisler. Walter is the chief of the Vehicle Regulations and Transport Innovation section of the Economic Commission for Europe. Walter, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, in addition to vehicle regulations and transport innovations, I am also happy to lead the work on road traffic safety. So I have an enriched portfolio. So if we go to the next slide, very brief to keep the time slide. Everybody knows the global plan for the decade of action for road safety. Under the element of what we do, you can see the safe vehicles is an important part to be played. Next slide. And if you dig more in this, there are the recommendations that require mandatory certification and registration systems, and also establishment of regulations for different activities. This is with focus on export and import of used vehicles. But in general, there is the statement that governments should provide through legislation a minimum set of safety standards for vehicles, considering all categories of vehicles, including passenger car, van, truck, buses, and now here, most important, powered 2- and 3-wheelers. Let's go ahead on the next slide. UNECE hosts the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations, WP29, which is in session this week. So therefore, I'm a little bit timely bound because we start in 25 minutes. We are servicing this World Forum for Harmonization now for more than 70 years, so I have somehow to update the slide. But it is the unique worldwide regulatory forum for the automotive sector, and we have 3 multilateral UN agreements, 2 dealing with the approval or certification of vehicles and 1 on periodic technical inspection of vehicles. In use, we have clustered our work into 6 clusters covering the different aspects: passive safety, general safety, pollution, and since 6 years, we have also a group dealing with automated, autonomous, and connected vehicles. They are developing and regularly updating the global regulatory framework for vehicles, and we are spearheading. So colleagues from industry are sometimes not so happy with our work because we are looking forward-looking and provide already now legislative requirements for this new upcoming technology. And even if these agreements are dated from a long time ago, The 1958 agreement was revised in 2017. So it is, let's say, a young agreement with an old name. Let's go to the next slide. And I think this is very important to look on why there is a need to have regulations, to have a global regulatory framework. Industry provides several versions of a given model. They, of course, have for left-hand drive, for right-hand drive. Then there is a version for the North American market, US and Canada, because they have a slightly different system of certification. And then they produce something for the rest of the world, meaning countries that do not have in place a regulatory framework, legislation that requires compliance of vehicles with the international regulatory framework. And if you look on the two images of the crash test on the right-hand side, it shows exactly the same type, the same model, which, by the way, is sold for the same brute price for different markets. Markets without any regulation and markets that have regulations. So I think it's obvious to point out which of the versions is those stemming from markets without regulation. This is, and I think nobody from us wants to be a passenger in the vehicle that is on top. And the difference, is this obvious or not?
I said or below. I wouldn't want to be either, but please continue.
Yeah, but below, you may have an injury, but you will not be killed.
Yes.
So this is first point. And the different safety, as I said, is depending on the national legal requirements. And if vehicles are sold in markets or in countries where no legislative requirements are in place, then you will receive a vehicle not equipped with airbags, with lower quality material, less strength of the material, even with less points welded in the structure, and even with fewer structure components, but still at the same price that you would pay in a high-income country for the vehicle. This is a little bit of a cash cow for industry, and I would see it's also an ethic problem with the industry. Let's get to the next slide, and this is we have set up a list of the most important UN vehicle regulations that should or are recommended to be used by countries that start putting in place a legal framework, and they cover all kinds of vehicle, passenger cars, powered two-wheelers, and commercial vehicles, and the different elements of active safety, passive safety, general safety. And also, what is important for road safety is that not only the driver sees where he is driving, but that the driver can also see other vehicles in front of him or standing somewhere on the road. And finally, what is important is that the vehicles that are in use are kept on an acceptable level of safety and environmental protection. And this is guaranteed with a regime of periodic technical inspection. A lot of the countries have such systems in place, but much more countries are hopefully on the way to set it up or needs to be convinced to set it up. Next slide. This is just, as we always talk about standards and regulations. So there is this Kelsen pyramid of law, which provides a distinction of the level of the different pieces of legislation. On top, of course, every country has its constitution, which is the basis of the legislation. And then under the level of constitution, we have constitutional law and international conventions, which also include the UN regulations and UN global technical regulations and the UN rules for periodic technical inspection. These are international legal instruments, and those of you who have ever looked on the treaty database of the UN, you will find there any of these UN regulations and rules present. Then the next level is primary law, secondary law, ordinances, and so on and so forth. And the lowest level is where you will find international and national standards. Standards are not binding, are not a legislation. Standards are products that are produced by NGOs, let's say it, non-governmental organizations, and that are put for sale. If you want to have an ISO standard, go to ISO and buy it. It's like going to a bookshop and buying a book. International legislation is free available. It's common good. It's good for everybody. And there you go on the UN website, specifically UNRSF, World Forum for Harmonization, WP29, and there you find all the regulations. And thank you so much, and I hope I have only exceeded the 5 minutes by 3.
Okay, thank you very much, Walter. Very technical presentation, and you made a big effort to condense it for something that we could digest in this time frame. I won't comment on the presentation, just to say that, of course, we were happy for Walter to start this part of the discussion, because really he's presenting the technical perspective as it relates to this issue of vehicle safety and power two-wheeler. We saw that there were several regulations that have already been looked at related to power two-wheelers, brakes, helmets, lighting, and a few others. But now I want to shift a little bit the focus on this lens of motorcycle safety to Nan Tran, who is the head of mobility at the World Health Organization. And there, thanks to World Health Organization, we do understand a lot more about motorcycle safety, where we are in terms of the legislative landscape, but also WHO is itself providing training to member states. So there is a lot of lessons learned that they have in terms of what they can share in terms of how our focus can be towards improving road safety, and particularly motorcycle safety. Before I give the floor to Nan, Walter, I think you have to leave because you have a W29 event. So any questions that we will have for Walter? I see, Juan, did you have a question for Walter? Please take the floor if you do.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Nan Tran, to interrupt because I have a question for Mr. Nielser. Mr. Nielser, good morning, sir. I want to understand how would I be able to get 05 series of amendments homologation certificate for a new helmet, and which would be the procedure as far as nowadays some countries are already requiring 2206, and I wonder if I can get also a 2205 homologation for my helmet.
Okay. First question is, where are you based? Then I can direct.
In Spain, sir.
In Spain? Easy.
Yes, sir.
You go to the Spanish Type Approval Authority. I think it's under the Ministry of Industry.
Yes,
or
sir.
you go to a Spanish technical service like IDIADA.
Yes, sir.
They will guide you. They will give you the whole package. They will take you by the hand and guide you through the process.
Okay, sir. Mostly probably they will contact you in order to understand better how to do it with a new model according to 2205.
It's their daily business.
Yes, I know, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, Juan. So
if it is possible, it's possible. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the question, Juan. So we are happy to connect you to Walter if needed afterwards. You have our contact, so let us know what you need. And this applies to everyone on the call. We can take these kind of bilateral interventions later or through email. Walter, thank you so much for your time and for your sharing. And now, again, the floor is yours, Dr. Tran.
Thanks so much, Anika, and thanks to the Road Safety Fund and Autoliv for organizing this event to mark World Motorcycle Day, which is news to me, by the way. I wasn't aware when I saw the announcement. I was like, wow, I didn't realize that there was a motorcycle day, International Motorcycle Day. So you learn something new every day. So I won't belabor a lot of the statistics and a lot of the technical details because I think a lot of that has already been shared by colleagues this morning, but also by Walter, who, as Anika said, is the real expert on the technicalities of the standards. What I do want to do is reflect a bit on some of the current challenges, what we have observed, and to reflect a bit and to perhaps challenge us in this room and on the screen to think about how do we think slightly differently about the solutions that can be put forward in order for us to address this growing problem. I want to just start off by saying that since we published the Global Status Report in December of 2023, a number of countries have actually come forward and given us additional data. What happens often is that they see the data that has been published and then they get inspired to share even more data. I'm saying that to reflect that we actually have a slight update to the initial figures that Anika had highlighted at the start of this. Actually, as of now, Power 2- and 3-wheelers, including motorcycles, actually comprise 30% of all global deaths. And they are actually now the largest category of road users that are impacted by road traffic crashes. In some, that's global number. Globally, it's the largest user group. In regions like Southeast Asia, for example, they comprise almost 50% of deaths. And I say that to highlight and put the accent on the point that addressing Power 2- and 3-wheeler use is essential if we want to achieve the 50% reduction in deaths by 2030. So it's not just something nice to do, it is essential and it is critical. And obviously, this is driven in part by the increase, as was reflected in the use of motorcycles and Power 2- and 3-wheelers around the world. So, for example, in the report, we looked at the difference between 2013 and 2021, which was the year for which we had data. And again, we don't have data for all countries. And so some of the data that I will share now may not correspond to other data. But for example, globally, we saw that there's been an increase from 313 million in 2013 to 487 million. That's globally. But for example, in the Western Pacific, in Southeast Asia and the Western Pacific, the numbers have actually tripled 3 times, since 2020, since 2013. And of course, this is what our colleague, the ambassador from Thailand, has said. And in the Americas, in Latin America, the number has doubled in the last 10 years. So there are a lot of reasons for why this is happening, right? People are speculating, is it because more urbanization? Is it because more congestion? In some instances, actually, using Power 2- and 3-wheelers is more green and more efficient, right, than using cars. So there are a lot of reasons, but we're also seeing an increasing move from rural areas to urban areas. And we expect that by 2030, that more than 70% of the world's populations will be living in urban centers. So it's not something that we can simply ignore for the impact. It's not something that we can ignore because it is increasing. And we also see, as I was discussing earlier, that the issue is actually quite complex. It's not something that is standardized across the world. In the Netherlands, for the first time in decades, they've seen an increase in number of deaths among riders of elderly population. And this has been driven by the fact that e-bikes enable older people to now use bikes and to maintain their mobility, which is actually a good thing. But the consequence of that, the unintended consequence of that, is that they are more susceptible to injuries and fatalities when they do have falls. We're also seeing, as been mentioned, use of Power 2- and 3-wheelers to transport children. And again, it's very easy to say, in principle, it's not something we should do. But the reality is that in many countries, this is the only means of transport. So all that to say that, it's not simply a matter of saying we need to put we need to. It's not a simple solution to say, yes, all motorcycles should adhere to standards. I agree wholeheartedly with what I said. Industries actually don't need to wait until countries actually accede to conventions. They can already put in place the requirements. And we can go into the discussion about the cost, but I won't. But more importantly, I think for me, I'd like to reflect on 3 key things. One is, as we're thinking about the solutions, Jean has mentioned here, there is a helmet that's available. But the implementation of this is quite challenging. We had looked at countries' legislations and we found that 160 countries actually had legislation on motorcycle helmets. However, only 54 of those countries actually had laws that met WHO best practice, which includes, for example, referencing a standard, right? And so that's a big part of it. A lot of countries had laws for helmets without referencing a standard. Even in cases when they do have a standard reference, it's not properly enforced. And one of the reasons why it's very difficult to enforce this is that, it's one thing to ensure the availability of standard helmets, but it's also another thing to ensure that counterfeit helmets are not in the market. So in a country like Vietnam, where I'm originally from, the helmet wearing rates are over 90%. Right? It was considered a huge success because motorcyclists, because the large number, are all wearing helmets. But the challenge there is that most of the helmets that are being worn are not standard helmets. And it's not just because there's a lack of safe helmets. It's also because there is a huge market for counterfeit helmets. And I'm saying this to simply highlight the complexity of implementation, right? So yes, we have, and that's the reason why we are trying to engage with private actors to think about innovative ways of ensuring that these types of issues can be adequately addressed. Through your value chains, for example, if you can ensure that your suppliers are not using counterfeit helmets, that could help to address this issue. But it also means that we have to think under Walter's pyramid of legislation, the range of regulations and laws. And this is often outside of the usual transport and health sector. It is with industry, it is with commerce and trade. So it's thinking about how do we work with other actors in a creative way. The second part of this, and I think Jessica Jung is going to address this later, is to think about how do we design our systems, our transport systems. We all know that most of the transport systems that are in place right now have been designed centrally around cars, right? And now cities are starting to rethink that. If we look at countries where motorcyclists and powered 2- and 3-wheelers comprise the majority of motorized transport, this includes countries like in Vietnam, in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, in Thailand, they comprise the majority. Yet we allocate most of the road space to cars. So it is not just a matter of saying, well, motorcyclists need to drive better, they need to behave, we need to make sure X, Y, and Z are in place. Yes, we do, but we also need to think about how those systems are designed to create conditions that enable safe use of powered 2- and 3-wheelers. And a lot of countries, and our colleague from Ho Chi Minh City is here, I was in a meeting and I had a discussion with them, and they said in Ho Chi Minh City, traffic is so slow that motorcyclists only go about 28 kilometers anyway on average per hour. Right? But they comprise a large part of it. So, speed is a good thing. So actually it works well because they reduce the speed. But it's not just thinking about interventions in isolation. It's thinking about how do you actually design a system that allow for a wide variety of modalities of transport to operate together. And that, I think, is really where we have to be thinking, and that's to my final point, which is that actually Walter highlighted the global plan, and the first recommendation in the global plan that was developed is in vehicles. It's actually multimodal transport and land use planning. And we actually had a lot of discussions about this because, again, as I said, we are actually pushing towards a paradigm shift in terms of how we think about mobility and transport. If you want to address motorcycle safety, we have to start thinking about alternatives for motorcycles. Most people access motorcycles, as Anika said at the start of this, because they're affordable, they're accessible, and they're easy to use. But they're also because people don't have other options. It shouldn't just be an option between a motorcycle and a car. It should be an option between a motorcycle, a car, public transport, walking, and cycling. And unless those options are there, we put people in this very dichotomous situation where you say, your only option is to either get into a motorcycle or a car. And for the vast majority of the world that live in these low and middle income countries, the solution will be a motorcycle. So it's not enough for us. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't focus on helmets, we shouldn't focus on ABS. It's not enough. Those things alone are not going to take us to 2030. What we have to do between now and 2030 and beyond is to think about how we think about the safe system as it applies to motorcyclists, and how we think about our transport systems and how we create truly multimodal transport systems that actually enable safe usage for a wide range of road users, including powered 2- and 3-wheelers, because these trends are coming. And the final point is that we also need to be vigilant and be aware of emerging technologies. 10 years ago, no one expected that we would be, the cities like Paris and Spain, you know, Madrid and Barcelona would be littered with scooters, you know, these personal scooters and personal micro-mobility devices. But that's the reality, and we don't know what's going to come. So I think part of this is really thinking about how do we maintain relevance, how do we stay vigilant and keep aware, but also how do we think about the bigger picture and the longer term picture. And for me, it's a combination of a multiple of responses. It is about helmets, it's about ABS brakes, it's about speed, but it is also about how we change and evolve our mobility and transport systems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nan. So there is no way that I could summarize that, and so I will attempt. But what I will say is that thanking very much Walter and Nan for setting this context, very much technical focus at the start, but really looking more at the broader, even I dare say public policy kind of perspectives as well, that we need to tackle. So I hope that this is really, you know, opening up some thinking and some questions for discussion later, because we really want to see what kind of, you know, partnerships and programming can really come out of this this initial discussion and the other discussions that you may be having. I'm going to give the floor to Jordi Lombardi. Jordi is the Executive Vice President and Chief Technical Officer at Autoliv. I'm really looking forward to hearing the presentation of Autoliv on what they have been doing on motorcycle safety, and also to further help us to think through ideas on next steps. Jordi, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I cannot insist that this is really a pleasure for me to be here. And mainly because not many people know Autoliv in reality. So we are the leader on safety on automobiles. We have 45% of the market share. In our 70 years of history, starting in Sweden, many of the airbags that you see today in the car are innovations that came from our company. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I have to say that the initiative on this fund, on road safety fund, and focus on motorcycles, or we call it technically powered two-wheelers, I think is an area that if we look at the statistics, we can obviously we try to do our best. I would like just to share our vision because for many years, as I said, you know, it's in the right pattern of innovation, that we were focusing in cars. And today, our mission has been adjusted because we want to provide world-class life-saving solutions, not product necessarily, solutions for mobility and society. And this encompasses, you know, different ways of moving from A to B. And this is relevant. Look at the next one. I want to emphasize that because this is our DNA. You know, it's what we call the real-life safety approach. And basically, we have an area in our company, the area of research, that basically we try to understand how people get injured. We try to understand the statistics. We are in cooperation with the World Health Organization. We are in cooperation with many other institutions. But basically, what we want to understand is in which situations people get injured. Because from a Pareto point of view, we want to approach and to provide solutions in areas where we can have the biggest impact. So once we understand how people get injured and what kind of accidents, then we also try to understand why, because you know what breaks is the human body. So there is a part that when we have selected these crashes, we try to understand what happened at the biomechanics of the body, because we can understand how the behavior of the body performs. When we have a good understanding of that, that is when we come up with the solutions. How do the industry can bring in that area. For example, we look at the data analysis, and you guys have repeated several times here, the portion of people that get injured for it to be speaking of with attention on it, right? So we came up with ideas. What about airbags? What about wearables? What about the next generation of helmets? And I have to say that statistics show that the first line of security for a motorcycle is helmet. I will say that the helmet is the seat belt of the motorcycle. Because in a car today, you have many airbags, but still today, but like the basic safety is the seat belt. When you put the airbags inside, then you can really improve the behavior and the here the same. So helmet is the key element. So you have to have the industry. The junk has taken to the wall, because this is one of the elements that has more impact. And then when we have this innovation, we try to understand how good is innovation. And for that, we need to develop test methods that represents the real situation in real life, what we try to do. And then is when we can measure the level of efficiency of our product. If this is correct, then normally what happens is that we can find an agreement with some customers that they believe on that. And when we prove that and we have the statistics, then is when legislations, the rest of the world is starting to do that in the recommendations for ratings, whatever is consumer ratings like NCAPs, etc. And this is what we call circle of life. Not the things. It's super important, I think, because we are having a complex problem. We mentioned all the factors that make influence here. And we not only represent the industry, what the industry can do, but we feel that without the academia in innovation, without the governments, whatever is infrastructure or legislation, and make sure that the products meet certain minimum level, this is relevant. And I think that we have proven that we have collaboration with many different entities here, trying to get the best of these elements together. Looking at the next slide. Okay. So a way to illustrate why the problem is complex is because if we base our analysis on data, we will see that, for example, in Germany, the use of the helmet is in the 90s%, while in the other sides, I thought that this is like the kind of picture again. Just one. Okay, the black helmet means the usage of helmets. And of course, the level of injuries that you can have in Germany are quite different than the ones that we can see in India, but also in China. Just as a reference, this doesn't tend to go. But the problem that we have with protecting motorcycle riders, it has to go a lot with the context and also with the level of implementation of different measures. If we go to the next one, please. And this drives us to different kind of solutions. For example, what you see in the left is the airbag that we create on the rider, on the vehicle. On the bottom is the patient. I don't know if you're aware, but for example, Subaru is the one who has the most advanced vulnerable airbag protection for vulnerable users that include bicycles and motorcycles. Because you can design that for pedestrians, but then you have motorcycles, the head is in the area. This is available. On the top is maybe you click once more to see if the animation goes. Yes. Is the airbag for motorcycles, that when the motorcycle impacts with something rigid, is very efficient. But this only represents a portion of the cake, of the crashes. But this one has significant because normally you try to hit with the head, with the beam on the car. And we think this is an element that we're studying here, and we have to recover it on that area. Then we are looking on the rider. And on the rider, we are looking for wearables. Today, I'm from Spain, from Barcelona, but I didn't have boats, but now I work a lot with Swedish, and almost every Swedish has a boat. And it's not a lot, but you go there with the lightest. Super simple. Our idea on the middle is, can we have this super basic light vest that when there is a crash inflates and pushes it from that point. We are looking on the helmets. This is the basic one. This is the one that probably will have a bigger impact. But also today, people get injured. The helmet, look at the protection. The fingers of the helmet is limited. So we are looking that we're exploring also is inflating and creating a extra space to absorb energy. It can give us some resources. Be aware that the economy of scale that we can provide in this billions of units is when we can make this thing popular. Today, if the last media uses, you can go and buy it. You will pay minimum $500. This can be more than 1,000 volumes, but other than this, then on the right, we are looking how can we help the culture and the understanding of safety. I think that is the element that is relevant. For example, in kind of motorcycling, all my kids have been racing from the right middle. For them to put the helmet, and like putting your dress, they don't doubt that they need the helmet. While I have a colleague in China who was an expert on and he provided a helmet to the person who was assisting them at home. And after some months, this person was not using the helmet anymore. Oh, you need to sleep or whatever. No, it's working. Yeah. So it's a little lack of cultural understanding that this is for safety, it's not for winter, for being warm. And I want to conclude because this is the slide that we almost finished on the presentation. This is just something that we do that all our employees, we can save lives, then the lives can be lived. And this is something that, in order to motivate our employees, because of quality, because if our product fails, it can be super injured. It's super important that we understand that all these devices at the end of the day, they are going to save your life in the critical moment. I tried 2 seconds about Autoliv is, and I hope that for the proposals that I expect for the end of the year, this will trigger the internet, because as we said, it's many solutions that point to the same element, and anything else.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jordi. Very helpful to see the perspective that you're bringing to this. It's very partnership oriented and solutions oriented. And I have no doubt that with your continued support and contributions to the fund, not financially only, but obviously in the strategic thinking of looking for solutions, I think hopefully we will be moving together in a good way. Lots of discussions about helmets. This is a topic that is particularly relevant to what we're doing in Rwanda at the moment. And without preempting too much, I'm pleased to give the floor to Mr. Edmond Tabanan Bazi, who is the first consular on behalf of at the mission of Rwanda, and he's delivering some statements on behalf of the ambassador for the mission. Thank you. Edmond, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to address this.
Maybe just a bit louder, Edmond. I think people are not hearing you so well.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to address this round the table discussion on behalf of His Excellency who actually wished to be here with us, but due to other engagements couldn't make it. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the UNRSF Service Secretariat and Autoliv for organizing this discussion, and all esteemed speakers who spoke before me for their contribution to this roundtable. In Rwanda, the use of motorcycle is very common, and the government of Rwanda has taken and continues to take measures that are necessary to ensure motorcycle users are safe. This goes along with our efforts to invest in a safe road environment, safety education, safety and service delivery, and safety service delivery and effective crash response. Road safety in Rwanda is very close to our hearts, as is the lives of motorcycle users. Concerning helmet wearing right in Rwanda, it is actually nearly 100%. You can see everyone on the motorcycle wears. We have laws in wearing helmets. effective enforcement of traffic laws, and increase share the commitment to safety and service delivery. Rwanda is committed to stepping up our collective efforts in the use of parity helmets. Our partnership with the UN Secretary General for Road Safety has been positive and has really had a positive impact to road safety management in Rwanda, and we remain committed to taking our operation to higher heights. The recent visit to Rwanda by the UNRSF for the safety minister Roundtable is a testament to this growing partnership. We are also implementing a number of projects. For example, we have been implementing through the UNRSF, which can be translated as Let's Protect the Health project in Rwanda, with the aim to develop local powers to two-wheeler helmets, impact testing, certification capacity, and to improve head protection in crashes. This has also been a step further in the researching the Rwandan standard using existing international regulation and ultimately local manufacturing of helmets, which are made in Rwanda, and that we expect to generate revenues, contribute to job creation, and eliminate the number of supply enforcements. We believe that collective efforts will continue to be crucial in achieving the SDG target 3.6 to halve the number of road deaths and injuries from road traffic crashes, and SDG target 11.2 in the provision of safe and accessible transportation system. The role of the UN Road Safety Fund and everyone in this cannot be emphasized enough. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Very helpful to hear, obviously, the local context. This is why we're here to work with member states to improve the situation on the ground. So we heard from Thailand earlier, and now we just heard from Rwanda. These are two countries that we, as the UN Safety Fund, with our partners, have been providing support on this, particularly on this issue of motorcycle safety. We're hoping that obviously we can provide additional support, but also new support to new sets of countries on this. I think this is a good moment now to open the floor up for more of an open discussion. It's also an opportunity to ask questions to persons who have spoken before. Don't be shy. We can start in the room. We can start online. It's sort of first come, first served situation. Do I have anyone in the room who wants to immediately take the floor? Or if you, Vanessa, you raised your hand first. So as promised, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. So on behalf of the International Motorcycle Manufacturers Association, I would like first to thank all the speakers, a very interesting exchange for the moment. But I would like to draw the attention to something which was not mentioned. It's a safe system approach towards motorcycling safety. We have our 4-pillar strategy, and according to us, in order to improve PTW safety, especially in low and middle income countries, we need to have a positive integration of power two-wheelers in all safety and mobility plans. But what is also extremely important that this plan should take into account the national context and specificities. One size doesn't fit all, as we know. Even in Europe, we have a great disparity between different countries, different usages, different patterns. And this is absolutely true for all countries, including those in low and middle income countries. So we call to policymakers really to embrace the safe system approach and to integrate PTWs in their safety and mobility plans in order to benefit of all the advantages that are offered from power two-wheelers in those countries. Then second point, of course, infrastructure. Nantran already talked about this. In many countries, infrastructure is not designed and it's not friendly to PTWs. We know that riders are unprotected, very vulnerable. They're not in a cage like in a car, for example. And infrastructure is something that could give really with quite a short-term performance. And we know from the last WHO report that only 20% of the roads correspond to the star rating introduced by IRAP. So there is something to be done, especially in low and middle income countries. Then the third point is education and safety culture. Nobody talked about the importance of training. We have countries in low and some countries in Southeast Asia where we do not have a licensing system, and the only one training provided is offered by the motorcycle industry. And this is really the key point of the key tool of cultivating safety culture. You need to have proper education, proper training, which is associated with safety awareness, and of course the importance of helmet wearing, correct helmet wearing, good quality helmet wearing. But really education and also enforcement are one of the key elements for improving PTW safety in low and middle income countries. And of course, last but not least, the industry is calling for the harmonization of vehicle regulations and is introducing some technological advances. But it should be clear that without this integrated approach, the industry could not improve safety alone, and we need policymakers and all stakeholders to contribute to this process and work together in order to make a difference. And also another point is that we are even missing data in many countries, like in Africa, even in Southeast Asia, and how you design a good, appropriate, and specific countermeasures if you don't have the reliable data, and if you don't even have also data about crash investigations, what were the main causation factors of the accidents and things like this. So just to finish, I want to tell you that we have our industry safety strategy. We are now updating it, but we have compiled an enormous examples from different continents of good practices, which could be easily replicated in the respective regions with the necessary adaptation, of course, because once more, I would like to repeat that one size does not fit all, and the national context, specificities, climate, economic situation, all these factors should be taken into account when we design safety and mobility plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vineta. Very, very helpful comments. I give the floor to Lotte. Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Lotte Brøndum. I'm from the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety, and thank you very much for this invitation. I was visiting Autoliv last week, and it's very impressive, and also a lot of innovation going on, which is around helmets, around here. I saw the lab. It was very interesting, and I don't know if I'm stretching myself here, but if anyone has the chance to go and see it, maybe not. No, I'm very happy to see. I think it's very clear that helmets is. I think we've seen it as a backdrop of colonization and low-income countries, and it's very important that we start addressing this. It's been on the mindset of many of the groups who are working. It's very good to see so many NGOs involved in this, but also because motorcycle riding is the only alternative for many people in low-income countries. It's also an opportunity. It has created a lot of opportunities for access to work, access to education. So the whole sort of aspirational and equity aspect is a big part of this discussion. And at the Alliance, we have over the past 6 months started on a white paper that we're going to launch in Morocco in February. And we have interviewed many of you here in the room and many who are online. And one thing that really stands out around helmets is affordability and availability. So we can talk a lot about good standard helmets. We can talk a lot about what we should do, but we actually need to make sure that we are thinking about that Seom driver and that Boda driver and that Piki driver, that Moto driver, who is now having access to education and access to the markets. But we are letting down because we're not making sure that these solutions are available on the ground. And there's a lot of things, and that's the good part of being in this room here, where we have so many different partners who can contribute, because this solution is not something that we can find that one of us need to do something about. Obviously, there's something around having a standard that is available and that's in place in the country. But there's also something about creating a demand for that standard and for that helmet in the country. And I see the private sector having a big role in driving that demand, because you have a lot of people who are going to work every day who you want to keep safe. So if you're creating a demand that in that country where you're operating, that there is a helmet standard and there's a helmet available at a cost that the ones who are your workers, that's one of the parts. We're also hearing a lot about taxation of helmets. We're talking about getting a helmet into a country, but many countries are taxating that helmet 30%. So on top of the $30 that it costs to manufacture, it needs to travel, and then it needs to enter into the country. So those in the room here who are looking into those things, I think there's something there that needs to be taken into consideration. And then I think $20 is a vast improvement of a price of a helmet. We have done we've done a piece of research where we looked at the prices of helmets, of standardized helmets, and they range from $1,000 to $20. But $20 is still a lot of money for that Piki driver and that Moto driver in a low-income country. So we need to come up with ideas how they can still access a helmet. Either it's through a scheme where they pay $1 a month or anything, but we need to have those creative ideas on the ground so we can get that moving. And then there's something around the standardization, because we heard it that 46 countries have standardization in helmets. Are we losing power here?
Sorry, next.
Sorry, yeah. And we also know that there are a range of helmets that actually are good helmets and will save that life in case of a crash. So we also need some of you guys who are working at the UN level to come up with ideas on how we are harmonizing those helmets, those 8-10 different helmet standards that are out there, and look at not only one opportunity or option, but a range of opportunities. So at the Alliance, we're talking about accountability, and accountability is about advocating for something, and then it's about committing to something. So I would like those of you who have a stake in this to commit to finding solutions for these things. I just listed a few. I'm happy to continue this discussion with anyone. Let's get this implemented, and then let's track the progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lotte.
Yeah.
Please, Jesper.
Thank you. I'm Jesper from the FIM, the International Motorcyclist Organization. I think what has been said, it's very true, all of it. And I just think one thing we should have in mind is that what we need to do is we need to prevent that you should have use of the helmet. That means we should try to learn the riders to ride so they don't crash. If we can start there, then we have a good start. And what we find when we look around, just like Vanessa said, we see several countries where you don't have a system for driver's license. You have no training, you have really no nothing. People just buy a motorbike and then they will go. Infrastructure is also a critical factor, which we have to look deep into. And I fully agree with everything else which is said about the helmets. We need to be smart, clever. We need to have a very cheap distribution. And I was laughing. It was you had a brilliant example, and that is if you go into a sailing boat or you go into a boat, it's natural for everybody. You wear a life vest immediately, and the technology there really are great today. Now it's a little thing you take on. It's not a big flummy thing, and this is just standard. It just became like this. It became like this because of the sailing clubs, the sailing culture were very eager to reduce drowning accidents. If you go to the ski slopes here in Switzerland, if you went there, I would say 25 years ago, or when I was a young man, you wear a hat to keep the cold out. Today, you don't see nobody with a hat to keep the cold out, or the tough guys don't be without a hat. You know, they all wear helmets. They all wear very fancy helmets, and they are very proud of their helmets. So it became a culture, it became a fashion. And I think this is the trick we have to do with motorcycle riders. So we need to create this culture of safety, and maybe we should not use the word safety, because safety is boring for most riders and most people out there. So we just have to make it like, you know, when something hits among the young kids, then everybody do it. And that's where we have to do. And how do we get there? Our experience is that if we can create, I would say, rider communities, rider organizations, rider federations, and maybe we combine it together with sports somewhere, because everybody are looking up to sport. That's why Jean Todt is using Marc Marquez, the MotoGP world champ, to show the helmet. And I think the Road Safety Fund should consider, can we stimulate that we are getting these rider organizations up with the secret aim to increasing safety, knowledge, education, but also to go to the authorities and ask for mandatory ABS, mandatory AHO, automatically headlight on, etc. And why don't we in the same second say the systems that IRAP developed are today global, the standards, what they are doing are so good. So maybe that should be the standard we are using in the global society to evaluate safety of roads. So that was just a little add-on.
Thank you, Jesper. So we've got about 5 hands raised online, and it seems we have about 5 minutes left in the room on the call. I hope it can be extended somehow, but I don't know if that magic is available. Nan, you had something really quick to respond to Jesper, and then we can give comments.
Just very quickly to respond to Jesper and also build on what Lotte said. I fully agree with you, Jesper, that that you want to build a safety culture, but I think we have to keep in mind that the accessibility, how you make something a norm, is by having it mainstream. That means everybody has to have access to it. Skiing, let's be honest, is a rich person's sport, right? Sailing is also a rich person's sport. So when you talk about introducing life jackets and helmets in the sport in context of skiing, as a skier, I spend 100 francs on my helmet. I can afford to do so. Lotte's point is that not everybody can afford to spend even $20 on a helmet. So I think that you're absolutely right. It has to be made mainstream. There has to be a cultural shift. But bringing about a cultural shift requires that whatever product it is you're trying to get in place has to be accessible. And that fundamentally is the point that has been made here. And I agree with you, the point that, but I would challenge your last point about going to governments and telling them to make ABS and running headlights mandatory. Why do industries have to wait until governments adopt that? If industries want to actually be proactive, they can actually do that already. The evidence on ABS is very clear. So the challenge to Veneta, and I was going to ask you this question earlier, is, we have a Morocco conference coming up in 2025. Is there an opportunity for the strategy that you're about to, that you've developed to be highlighted there? And is there an opportunity for IMA and other industries to say, look, we're willing to actually adopt these practices on a voluntary basis? So I think that, there's a lot of emphasis, and we at the UN place a lot of emphasis on global regulations because that's our way of acting. That's our ability. That's where we can contribute. But you as industry also have different mechanisms to which you can work and contribute. You don't have to wait for the UN conventions to be adopted by countries. You can actually already implement those things now. And I would encourage that to happen.
Thank you, Nan. Valeria, can you help me to determine the order online?
The first is Jessica Tron.
Jessica, you have the floor. Please, I'm so sorry to ask you to be brief, but I'm sure you're usually concise, but go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on the point that Nan mentioned earlier about wanting to understand what that holistic system for motorcycle safety look like. So governments around the world are starting to look at what a safe system that can achieve a 50% reduction in road fatalities and injuries, and even zero by a certain date, would actually have to look like. And through that research, we have a pretty good understanding of what a zero fatality system would look like for car occupants, but less so for motorcyclists, because a lot of that research has been done in high-income countries. So I think there is an opportunity for us, if we want to really reduce motorcycle fatalities and injuries, is actually invest in a little bit more research in understanding what does a holistic system and an ideal system that can protect motorcyclists from injuries would have to look like. And we're not just talking about individual interventions, which are fantastic, but actually really understanding how do we combine them in a way to create a holistic system that can reduce those fatalities. And understanding then who are the actors and players that are responsible. Until we actually have a very clear picture of what that system needs to look like that can protect motorcyclists, it's very difficult for us to divvy up the responsibilities and start building that system. So I think there is a great area of need there. But while that is being sort of pending, there are things that we can fill the gaps with right now. And I agree with Nan's point that regulation is only filling a gap, and there is a need for industry to step up to be able to implement a lot of the technologies and solutions that are already there. But in the absence of that, obviously regulation is still another very important thing that we need to deploy where we can. Motorcycle ABS has been touched on very briefly, but it should be highlighted again because there are so few interventions available that are effective for reducing motorcycle injuries at the moment that we should be pushing to implement as much as possible what we do have at our disposal. And motorcycle ABS is one of them. So we've got some work ongoing, thanks to the UN Road Safety Fund, focusing on motorcycle ABS in Southeast Asia. And when we talk about regulations for motorcycle ABS, the focus shouldn't just be on having a regulation, but having a regulation that matches the situation of the country. So many of the motorcycle ABS regulations around the world focuses on larger capacity bikes. But if you look at where the trauma is happening, such as Southeast Asia, small capacity bikes dominate the market. So if you implement a regulation that is for high capacity bikes, 125cc and above, you actually miss out on 90% of the bikes that are actually of a much lower capacity. So regulations are important for motorcycle ABS, but the content of what it should focus on is also equally as important. And that is a message that should resonate not just in Southeast Asia, but in Africa, Latin America, and even in Europe, where there are much smaller capacity bikes that would also benefit from the technology. So I think there's a couple of areas of innovation that if we collaborate, we should be able to fill the gap. And I look forward to further collaboration with everyone in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So I'm going to close off the round of comments attributed to Sam, Mary, Ishtiaq, and then giving the last word to Peter in the room. Sam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'd like to support Nan's point about access. I think we do riders a disservice by saying that they don't want to be safe. And I think the issue is affordable access to training and affordable access to protective gear. In Kenya, something we haven't really spoken about much today is the challenges around enforcing legislation and standards. Kenya is quite unique in that respect in terms of sub-Saharan African countries, where there is a robust legislation around two-wheelers, which links to a Kenyan helmet standard, which is basically a copy and paste of the Indian standard, but it's robust. It's been in place since 2012, and yet the market is still dominated by cheap counterfeit helmets coming in from outside of the country, which indicates obviously that there is a massive lack in enforcement capacity around compliance with the helmet standard. Our focus is on, there is a fledgling helmet manufacturing industry in Kenya. We see that as addressing more than one issue, really. It's if we grow that industry, we grow jobs, Kenya benefits from economic growth and so forth, but we also keep the cost of helmets low. And there is greater scrutiny on the Kenyan manufacturing industry, and therefore we're more certain that there will be compliance and that riders will be safer. We also want to stem the flow of helmets coming in from outside the country, largely from China and India. There is no helmet testing lab in Kenya at the moment. For funding, I've been rebuffed, to be honest, by a number of funders. We're asking for something like $300,000 to set up a helmet testing lab, which I don't think is an extraordinary amount of money, considering the impact that it could have in stemming that flow of counterfeit helmets coming into the country and concentrating efforts on building the manufacturing industry in the country, keeping helmets affordable for riders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Mary, please go ahead. Introduce yourself as well, please.
Thank you. My name is Mary. I work at UN Habitat, ROAF, Regional Office of Africa. I'm also a motorcycle rider, as you can see, but also very passionate about road safety and with a special focus on two-wheelers, cyclists and motorcyclists, and have been at the forefront of just organizing the community, the private biking community, to do initiatives around road safety. And it's just really interesting to see that this platform is there where all players in the industry are coming to talk about these things. Just recently, we had an initiative where we reached out to commercial riders, which form the bulk of motorcycle riders in Kenya. And other than it, as we have talked about, being a source of livelihood for many people, I think some of 3 gaps I'll mention is that just research to understand why, like Sam has mentioned, that there's a cost factor to acquiring the helmets, but also there are also probably other cultural issues why they wouldn't want to wear helmets. One of the things we found as we distributed some of these helmets is that the issue of affordability, some will come get the helmets, but walk across the road and sell it. So if it's possible to make most of these helmets more available, good quality helmets available, then when they are in the hands of more people, then it means that they'll end up wearing them and not have to sell them so that it actually benefits them. Of course, there's need for advocacy for behavior change and just encourage more and more people to wear them. The question of the quality of the helmets, the few that wear them, you'll see them faithfully wearing helmets, but they have a crack, they're broken. The standard is definitely so then is poor. So there's definitely need to standardize the quality of helmets available to these people. And it's really exciting to see that there's a UN certified helmet that is really affordable. And I think we're definitely happy to work on this and make more of these helmets available to these people. So this really is a actual practical step in the right direction. Of course, policy, again, as Clark has shared, Clark, I'm requesting that you share that PDF version. I can't access it from SharePoint. Yeah, need for policy and so that the helmets coming in are not substandard helmets. So I'm happy to be part of this conversation and just to see also what the people in the region, across the world, and also in Tanzania and Rwanda are doing, and definitely take this to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Ishiak, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Enika. In the Asia-Pacific region, we have a regional mandate to focus on the motorized two-wheeler safety. The regional plan of action for Asia and the Pacific for the second decade of action for road safety, 2021-2030, which is in line with the global plan, It emphasizes on the motorized two-wheeler safety in all its 7 areas of work. Whatever actions have been discussed so far, all are included there. And in line with that, the Regional Action Program for Asia and the Pacific, which was adopted by the transport ministers of the Asia Pacific countries, emphasized on the motorized two-wheeler safety. And in line with that, UNSCAP has partnered with UNECE, MIROS, Towards Zero Foundation, FIA Foundation. We are working in the ASEAN sub-region of ESCAP towards advocacy campaign in the ASEAN countries. Moreover, we are also working on the development of a motorized two-wheeler safety master plan in Thailand, thanks to UNRSF Secretariat providing funding. And in the future, we are interested to develop a motorized two-wheeler master plan for the ASEAN countries. There are various other initiatives. That's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ishtiaq. Peter, the floor is yours. You don't have the last word because George from UNEC and Simone from Ducati would like to say some things. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. I mean, I was hoping you didn't ask me to summarize the time. No, thank you. I think, I mean, what I'm hearing is fantastic. I think also very, very frustrating, of course. I think we would recognize the challenges and see the problems. And probably agree that there are, I mean, no single solution that can solve all problems, but hopefully we understand that most solutions can solve some of the problems. And I think it shouldn't be a reason not to act. One of the reasons for bringing our part into this was to show you that there are solutions that are mature, and that this is just a very small part of the domain of solutions. Of course, we're talking about body protection, head protection, and on vehicles solutions, so to speak. But we have heard a lot of different other solutions. But the point is that they are there. And what I wanted to just mention was to kind of bring focus back to one of the reasons for being here is the upcoming call in September that the UN Road Safety Fund will be doing in collaboration with us. And I really hope, and I guess this is a challenge to the steering committee selecting projects in the call, that we can take some of these things that are truly system level changes and find a way to fund that. I mean, what I heard from you, Sam, is that and a great obstacle we see in making progress on helmets in Africa is connected to the testing. We know firsthand what that means. Testing according to rigorous methods and doing it in a repeatable way is critical. So I think it's a fantastic type of initiative. In essence, I think we need both non-regulatory and regulatory efforts combined. Maybe just connecting also to an example, what could be a potential project related to what you mentioned, Nan, is getting the industry to act voluntarily, like you said, right? I guess being in the industry for more than 25 years, whatever it is by now, it's always been a challenge. There needs to be this motor or incentive structure going on in a way. You would always have industry leaders that are willing to step up and do innovation for the sake of innovation, but they are really trying to find a market at the end of the day. They want to be recognized as innovative leaders, and they will not all of the manufacturers, whoever they may be, even it's car or motorcycles, are not going to assume that role. There is this entire, of course, different strata of the market, but there are tools that we all know are very effective. So regulatory tools, of course, are raising the floor and extremely important in making safety available to everyone at the end of the day. But consumer rating has been extremely critical in bringing car safety to the standard that it is today. That means that the manufacturers have been able to demonstrate to the consumers that they are actually outperforming regulation by a far margin, and they can show how much safer their cars are. We have the same opportunities for motorcycle, but it's of course much more tricky because, as we know, safety is not confined to the MC itself or the motorcycle itself. It's much more of a combination of things. But that's where I think the fund and the entire network here can help provide some innovations. We've seen it was mentioned by the gentleman from the UNRSF, the collaboration with Myros and the idea of a holistic rating that helps us understand as consumers or motorcycle riders kind of how to choose. And if the manufacturers of wearables, helmets, motorcycles can get some recognition for the fact that they are leading the way, then this whole engine of innovation will continue to be fueled. So at least that part of the problem might be going forward.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. George, please.
Thank you very much, Nika. And actually, it was a very interesting conversation, and I was very happy to join it on PNC. I want to make a mention of what Mary mentioned, because I found it very interesting. The way the system works at the moment, the regulatory system, is indeed as you saw it in Walter's presentation. So you saw one car which doesn't follow the safety standards, as opposed to a different performing, same vehicle, same model, but with compliance with standards. That's what we need to do. Like, one of the things that work in today's landscape on road safety is precisely the regulatory framework. It is very clear from all the discussion here that this is probably the foundation, or in Walter's presentation, the top of the pyramid. But the key is accessibility. The key is combating counterfeits. So what we want to see, and we hope, and we actually will see the road safety performing, road safety fund performing, is actually helping us to reach to the top, like in a progressive way, like building on the successes and go higher, not a race to the bottom. So that we hope very much that our work also can help support these broad efforts. But the bottom line is we don't want to race to the bottom. We don't want to go to the individual solutions which are not compliant with the system. The system, the regulatory system, is not the whole story. And here now is the point. It's a valid point. So we need to see how we can build on what we have, not in a regressive way, but in a progressive way, in order to fill the gaps which actually meet the needs of developing countries, especially lower middle income countries, right? And accessibility, prior to portability, these are critical issues. So this is where all the efforts can actually really make a big difference. And of course, the whole enforcement thing is a bigger issue, and the whole counterfeit, it's a broader issue. It's not only matter.
Thank you, George. Sylvie?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a head of innovation and R&D services in Ducati, and I would like to share with you our approach to safety. We care a lot about safety. But of course, we are manufacturer of high displacement motorcycle. We are selling those motorcycles globally. So we are addressing also countries that were mentioned here during the speaking. Our approach is based on first technology. We study a lot. We introduce a lot of technological, for example, electronic control systems like traction control, wheel control, and so on. But of course, technology is expensive. So I think that the challenge, if you want to use technology to improve safety, is to find a way of making technology scalable in order to be used on different levels of vehicles, not only on the high end. We try to push technology safety with our customers. For example, we do a lot of advertisement stating that our motorcycle are equipped with systems that increase safety. We provide back protectors for free to our customers in order to push them to use something which is not mandatory but helps a lot to improve safety. And last but not least, we have a lot of so-called academies to teach. You mentioned training before, to teach how to drive properly in a safe way, not only to improve performance on a racetrack, but just for rookie, for beginners, how to drive in a safe way, exploiting and relying on the electronic systems that you have on your motorcycle to be safe on the road. But of course, I'm not an expert in statistics, but I believe that many of the accidents are due to the interaction between passenger cars and motorcycle, not only due to the motorcycle rider themselves. So we need to work a lot on that. we are part of the Connected Motorcycle Consortium, which is a consortium between, among manufacturers that is studying how connectivity can help to improve the visibility, let's say, the digital visibility of motorcycle riders in the road environment. Let's say.
Thank you very much. Okay, colleagues, so thank you very much for spending time with us this morning to discuss this topic and to hear about some of the ideas that we have on the table related to motorcycle safety. I won't summarize, I'll just maybe more put forward something looking forward, a call to action, which is to reach out to the Secretariat for connections among yourselves so that we can see some very, there are lots of good adjectives, innovative, impactful projects that will support member states in improving road safety and motorcycle safety in their countries. We will be, as a Secretariat, holding different sensitization opportunities with different partners so that we can encourage this collaboration. So this is just one of several, so stay tuned for others. But for this one, thank you very much for your attention, for your participation, for your interest, and more importantly, thank you in advance for your submissions on projects to the UN Road Safety Fund under the next call, which will be launched officially in September. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.